What if I told you that true love, the kind you've pursued your whole life, is hidden precisely in the darkness you fear most within yourself? Stop for a moment and feel the weight of this truth. You can read all the holy books, repeat daily affirmations to the mirror, seek answers in the stars, or try to fill your heart with fleeting promises. However, if you don't understand the fragmented nature of your own being, affection will remain a mirage in the desert. It will shine from afar, but will turn to dry sand as soon as it touches your hands. Today, we won't talk about worldly theories or empty advice. What I share here is an ancient secret about how souls intertwine and shatter. It's a truth so simple and crystalline that it physically hurts that we've lived so long with our eyes closed to it. The love you beg from the outside world only blossoms when you make peace with the ghosts you've locked away in your own basement. If you've been drawn to this moment, it's no accident. It's your intuition, that silent and wise voice of the spirit, warning you that love cannot be a feast of crumbs. Love is not a prize you win for being good enough or for suppressing your own desires. Over the years you have loved, yes, you have given yourself, but in the absolute silence of the night, when no one else was watching, you also felt the echo of an insurmountable emptiness. Why do you feel this hole in your chest even when you are next to someone? Why is there a constant fear of not being enough, of being abandoned, of disappearing in the other person's life? This happens because almost all of us have been taught to love through lack, not through fullness. Since childhood, we have been conditioned to believe that affection is a bargaining chip. We learn to mutilate our emotions to fit the mold of others' expectations, hiding the parts we consider ugly or difficult so as not to suffer rejection. We have become experts at betraying our own essence for a few drops of attention, and, as adults, we carry these invisible wounds into our homes and our relationships. We fall in love driven by a desperate need for salvation, not by the freedom to share who we truly are. We tell the world we love, when in reality we are only trying to use the other person to fill holes that should never have been opened. But the universe doesn't sustain this illusion for long. The human soul doesn't accept living a lie, and it is precisely here that the pain becomes unbearable. Because seeking the cure for your loneliness in another person's body is like drinking salt water to quench your thirst. Every time you find this false love, it seems real and grand for a brief moment, but inevitably, it evaporates, leaving you thirstier, more tired, and more lost than before. Have you ever wondered why this cycle of disappointment repeats itself so many times in your life? There is a brutal reason for it. There is an invisible law that governs the human psyche and determines the course of our romantic encounters and disencounters. When we ignore our wounds and refuse to look at our own shadows, we awaken a silent and relentless force that takes absolute control of our destiny. This relentless force has a name. Carl Jung, the great explorer of the depths of the human soul, called it the shadow. He understood a mystery that completely transforms our view of suffering and the human spirit, leaving us with a very clear warning. No one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but rather by becoming aware of their own darkness. What does this mean in practice in your life? It means that the path to authentic love is not forced positive thinking. It's not ignoring your secret wounds, nor trying to always be an unceasingly good and perfect person to please others. The true path is having the courage to look directly at what hurts and stop running away from yourself. Think about your daily life and be very honest. Think about the exact moment when you swallow your tears to appear strong and unwavering in front of the one you love. Remember the silent panic and anxiety that take over your chest when a message takes too long to be answered on your cell phone. Or remember that secret envy you feel when you see an acquaintance living with the freedom and boldness that you yourself don't allow yourself. That part of you that causes discomfort, that raw emotion you try to stifle in your pillow at night, the traits you criticize in others with such fury and revulsion. All of that is your shadow. And here's the big turning point, the revelation that changes everything you've learned so far. This darkness is not your enemy. It's not a monster under the bed nor a divine punishment sent to ruin your relationships. Your shadow is a part of you that learned to protect you when you were too small, fragile, or vulnerable to defend yourself from the world. It was the survival armor your soul forged to withstand life's harsh winters and past rejections. However, it's also the part of you that most needs to be seen, embraced, and understood now that you've grown up. It's very easy to love the beautiful things about yourself, It's extremely easy to feel proud of your intelligence, your willpower, your appearance, or your tenderness. But the true alchemy of the spirit happens when you ask yourself the most difficult question of all. Can I love my fear? Can I love my insecurity, my desperate neediness, my anger, and my selfishness? The difference between immature love and fully conscious love lies precisely in this choice. Immature love demands that the other person fill your voids, heal your traumas, and banish your demons. Conscious love, on the other hand, understands that these voids belong only to you. They are your sacred story on earth, your map of evolution, and there is no one in the whole world who can heal these holes for you. Stopping the fight against your own nature and beginning to integrate your darkness is a solitary task. It is an act of extreme honesty, of pain, but also of infinite self-compassion. When you finally embrace what you hate most about yourself, the game of destiny changes completely. You stop handing over control of your happiness and your worth to others. However, the human psyche plays fascinating and dangerous tricks. If you refuse to look inward, if you insist on locking your shadow in the darkest room of your mind, it will find a way to manifest itself outside. It will create an invisible labyrinth around you, and without you realizing it, the universe will begin to send very specific people into your life, tailor-made for the sole purpose of forcing you to open your eyes to what you deny. Have you ever noticed how you tend to feel drawn, almost hypnotically and uncontrollably, to people who end up touching exactly on your deepest wound? Have you ever noticed how you often feel drawn, almost hypnotically and uncontrollably, to people who end up touching on your deepest wounds? This isn't a punishment from fate, nor an unfortunate event written in the stars. Science and depth psychology reveal a disturbing fact about human nature. Our brains have immense difficulty distinguishing extreme anxiety from overwhelming passion. The chemicals released in your body when you're facing real danger are practically the same ones that flood your bloodstream when you meet someone who mirrors your unresolved childhood traumas. You feel your heart race, your hands sweat, your stomach churn, and your breath falter, and your mind immediately translates these warning signs as the overwhelming chemistry of true love. But most of the time, it's not love. It's your nervous system sounding a desperate alarm because it has recognized an extremely familiar danger. Carl Jung called this impressive mind magic trick projection. Projection is the completely unconscious act of using another person's face and life as a giant movie screen, projecting onto it the unfinished films of your own soul. Think of that coworker or family member who irrationally irritates you simply by the way they speak, act, or breathe. That extreme arrogance you detest with all your might in the other person is almost always a reflection of your own repressed desire to feel powerful and to express yourself without the paralyzing fear of others' judgment. The same psychological spell works with what you intensely admire. If you fall madly in love with free, unpredictable, and wild people, it's not just because their charm is irresistible. It's because your own inner freedom is chained in the dark, begging to be lived. You unconsciously try to live your audacity and rebellion through the existence of the other. Everything that awakens an extreme emotion in you, whether blind admiration or deep hatred, acts as a perfect mirror. And mirrors don't lie, even when we don't like the reflected image. If we are brutally honest with our own history, we will realize that all our romantic relationships, without exception, were exact reflections of our inner world and our level of self-love. These people didn't cross your path by chance to cause gratuitous suffering. They appeared to help you see your flaws and desires with a clarity that would be absolutely impossible to achieve in solitude. As long as you don't decipher this inner enigma, the universe will continue to send the same life lesson packaged in different bodies. You can change cities, change jobs, alter your circle of friends, and replace your romantic partner several times, but the dynamic of pain will remain exactly the same. The abusive pattern, the feeling of abandonment, and the cycle of rejection are not fixed on them. The pattern is ingrained in you. It is at this exact point in the journey that most people give up and retreat, because hearing this deeply wounds their pride. How can you be held responsible for the wounds that other malicious people have inflicted on you? The liberating and definitive truth is that you are not at all to blame for what happened to you in the past. It wasn't your fault that you were hurt, neglected, deceived, or betrayed by those who should have protected you. However, it is your absolute and non-negotiable responsibility what you decide to do with this pain from today onward. It is the responsibility to stop looking to the sky asking why people hurt you so cruelly, and to start looking inward, asking with extreme courage, what dark part of me chose to remain there? What invisible belief about my own worth made me normalize this kind of emotional crumb? When you abandon the position of victim of circumstances and stop blaming the external world, you immediately regain your sovereign power of choice. You discover that you no longer need your partner to change for your peace to be restored. Your transformation dictates the rules of the game. But getting out of this invisible web of destructive repetitions seems like an almost superhuman task. You cry, promise yourself you'll never again accept less than you deserve, swear you've learned your lesson, and weeks later find yourself giving in and making the exact same mistake. Why does this happen so often? Why does our mind cry out for healing, but our actions drag us back to the edge of the abyss? The answer to this dilemma isn't in your conscious thoughts. It's hidden in a much deeper, more primal place. There's a silent ancient memory inhabiting the muscles and cells of your body, and this memory holds a vital secret that dictates all your romantic choices without you even realizing it. There is a fundamental error in the way we try to heal our romantic wounds. We believe that suffering resides only in the mind, but Carl Jung taught us that spirit and matter are not separate. Your physical body is not merely a biological vehicle. It is the sacred alchemical vessel where your unconscious dwells and expresses itself. Your cells, your muscles, and your nervous system hold the silent memory of everything you have ever lived through, of all the times you remained silent to be accepted, and of all the moments when love was presented to you alongside pain. This immense library of flesh and blood records every small rejection as a universal law of survival that dictates your destiny. When you feel trapped in a repetitive cycle, changing partners and settings but reliving the exact same feeling of abandonment, this is not by chance. It is your shadow manifesting itself in the density of matter. The human soul has a mysterious and ancestral impulse to return to the exact location of the original wound. We don't repeat destructive stories because we are weak or because we have a vocation for suffering. We repeat them because there is a fragmented part of our being that is desperately trying to fix the past in the present. Your body blindly seeks what is familiar, and the familiar, even if it is a lethal poison, provides a false illusion of security for a frightened heart. That's why you feel an uncontrollable magnetism for people who are incapable of genuinely loving you. Your nervous system confuses the roller coaster of anxiety with the flame of passion. You feel your stomach sink, cold sweat on your palms, and shortness of breath, and your mind quickly labels it as fate knocking at your door. But stop and ask yourself with profound honesty, why does your heart race and vibrate precisely in the face of that which has the power to destroy you? What does your body recognize in this familiar pain that your conscious mind desperately tries to deny at all costs? The answer reveals one of the greatest paradoxes of the human spirit. We spend our entire lives fleeing the unknown, preferring the hell we already know to the paradise we haven't yet dared to explore. If you learned in childhood that affection demands constant sacrifice and personal annihilation, the stability of a peaceful love will seem like unbearable boredom to your organism. If you were invisible to the people who should have protected you, your body will vibrate with chaotic and intense energy when you encounter someone who ignores you, because that is the only effective language your nervous system knows how to decipher. The body doesn't judge what is good or bad. It merely faithfully reproduces the survival map that was drawn in your youth. Escaping this invisible labyrinth requires much more than the simple intellectual will to change. Jung constantly warned us that we cannot resolve a deep conflict by operating solely on the plane of reason. We need to descend into the depths of instinct. To break the spell of repetition once and for all, you need to learn to inhabit your own body with a full and unwavering presence. When the deadly attraction to a sick love awakens, you cannot simply give in to the impulse, nor try to repress it with brute force. You must anchor your consciousness in matter, breathe through the great discomfort, and teach your flesh, day after day, that true love does not carry the metallic taste of despair. This is the exact moment when true psychological alchemy happens. The magic of transformation lies not in fighting attraction, but in creating a space of silent observation between the external stimulus that hurts you and your automatic defense reaction. When you take this pause, you break the ancestral chain of family trauma. But this small pause is terrifying. When the spell of abandonment manifests again before your eyes in the form of a charming person, Will you have the courage to remain in absolute silence and simply watch the storm pass through your veins? Who is truly in control of your life when this primal fear awakens in the darkness of your soul? To reclaim sovereignty over your own romantic destiny, you will need to confront the relentless guardians of this dark memory. It's no use seeking comforting answers in the eyes of those who hurt you, for the other is merely a supporting actor in the grand theater of your spiritual evolution. The journey from now on demands that you turn entirely inward, armed only with the lantern of your own conscience. There are very specific questions that act as golden keys, capable of unlocking the heaviest doors of your unconscious and releasing the vital energy you have lost. And when you finally have the courage to utter these questions at the altar of your heart, the illusion will crumble in an instant. The golden keys that unlock your unconscious are not comforting positive affirmations, but questions that cut to the very flesh of your illusion. When you sit in the silence of your room, ask yourself with brutal honesty, what deep need was I trying to satisfy when I accepted this humiliation? Where in my sacred timeline did I learn that I needed to diminish myself to fit into someone else's world? Who am I secretly trying to save when I fall for people who are sinking? By formulating these questions, you are not punishing yourself. You are initiating the true alchemy of the soul. Jung warned us that encountering one's own shadow is, initially, a death experience, as it demands the destruction of the false identity you have built to survive. But herein lies one of the most fascinating and surprising discoveries of depth psychology. When we talk about exploring the inner darkness, the human mind immediately imagines monsters, perverse instincts, and terrible traumas. However, there is a hidden and far more painful phenomenon known as the golden shadow. The greatest secret of your unconscious is not your wickedness, but your overwhelming light. During childhood, you didn't just repress your anger or your fear. You repressed what was most brilliant, wild, and divine within you, simply because your greatness bothered the people around you. Perhaps you were an excessively cheerful child with a volcanic imagination and frightening freedom, and you were told you were noisy, annoying, or inappropriate. To avoid losing your family's affection and being abandoned, you clipped your own wings, buried your gold in the basement of shadows, and began to walk through life as a spiritual beggar, begging others to give you crumbs of what you yourself had hidden. This is the real reason why you admire certain people to the point of blind idolatry. You don't truly love them. You are merely seeing in them your own exiled light, your own dormant genius, your own forbidden sensuality. When you understand this illusory mechanism, the game of attraction suffers a seismic shock. You realize that healing your heart is not just about forgiving those who hurt you, but about recovering those divine fragments you abandoned along the way. And when you finally begin to integrate this totality, an extremely improbable and paradoxical event takes over your love life. At the exact moment you manage to build unwavering self-love, and as a consequence attract a truly kind, stable, and secure person, your first instinct will not be euphoria. It will be panic. Therapies around the world record a curious and counterintuitive fact. Many people report feeling a deep sadness, or a sudden and inexplicable urge to run away, precisely when they enter a completely healthy relationship for the first time. They confuse this strange feeling with a lack of love or physical attraction, and end up sabotaging the relationship at the first opportunity. But the biology of the nervous system, combined with ancestral wisdom, brilliantly explains this mystery. That sudden crying or that frightening apathy doesn't mean love isn't there. It means that, for the first time in your entire existence, your body has registered an environment of absolute safety. Your nervous system has finally understood that the war is over. And by shedding the heavy armor you've carried for decades, all the old, unprocessed pain comes to the surface to be released. What seems like the end of love is, in fact, your soul exhaling trapped air for the first time. Sustaining this strange calm and not running away when the danger disappears is the greatest test of spiritual maturity you will face. Authentic love, stripped of the masks of trauma, doesn't require you to mutilate yourself or hide. It's not a roller coaster that threatens to throw you into the void at any moment, so you beg for salvation. It's a deep, constant, and silent river. When you endure the absence of drama and accept tranquility without feeling guilty or suspicious, the invisible currents of the past break forever. You stop being a slave to your own thirst and become the source of it all. When you finally accept the peace of a healthy love and stop distrusting tranquility, a frightening and inevitable consequence takes over your life. The great turning point in the healing process is not that everything immediately becomes easy and bright. The hidden truth, the one that romances and fairy tales deliberately omit, is that your external world will need to crumble first. Carl Jung understood that when the invisible architecture of our soul undergoes a profound alteration, the material reality around us simply loses its ability to sustain itself. It's as if your vibrational frequency changes station, and suddenly, the music you heard with the people around you completely loses its meaning. Old friendships and long-standing connections begin to fade without much explanation or argument. Relationships that seemed unbreakable and essential suddenly reveal themselves to be fragile, exhausting, and empty. You begin to feel a profound physical and spiritual weariness in the face of superficial conversations, intrigues, and emotional games that you previously considered perfectly normal. This dark phase of the journey is often described by ancient mystics as the Great Desert Crossing. It is the moment of greatest tension, doubt, and fear in the entire process, as you clearly perceive that your own healing has pushed you into a state of acute isolation. Your mind, panicked by the unknown, will scream that you have made a terrible mistake, whispering that your new awareness and your new limitations have condemned you to eternal solitude. At this very point, you will feel an almost uncontrollable urge to turn back. The temptation to dim your light, to silence your truth, and to wear old masks just to avoid being alone will be immense. The question will echo in the silence of the night. Is it worth paying such a high price, losing people I loved, just to be true to myself? But it is precisely within this terrifying void, when you feel you have lost all your anchors, that the true alchemical miracle takes shape. The heavy silence that surrounds you now is not an abandonment by the universe. It is a rigorous cleansing. The empty space in your life is being swept away and prepared to receive something that finally resonates with your wholeness, and no longer with your lack. You begin to notice a drastic and powerful change in your daily behavior. Saying no, a word that once caused paralyzing guilt and an irrational fear of rejection, suddenly becomes a natural, calm act, full of self-love. You no longer trade your inner peace to maintain false harmonies. You simply stop justifying your choices or your absence in places that drain your vital energy. And perhaps the greatest liberation of all happens at this turning point. You lose the compulsive need to please, convince, or impress others to prove that you deserve to breathe and exist. You stop caring if someone finds you cold, distant, or different, because you have finally discovered who you are in the dark. When there is no audience to applaud, your identity ceases to be a hostage in the hands of others. And when you reach this unshakable state of inner sovereignty, something magical and relentless happens to your magnetic field. People who operate on the frequency of manipulation, drama, and need simply stop approaching you. They sense purely instinctively that there are no longer any open cracks in your aura through which they can enter to drain your vitality. Conversely, without any effort or desperate search, you begin to attract souls who have also made the arduous journey through the desert. Mature people who are not looking for a magical savior, nor a sick patient to fix, but rather a true travel companion. You begin to see a magnetic beauty in what is simple and direct. Love loses its aspect as a commercial transaction based on debts, demands, and shortcomings, transforming into a pure celebration of shared existence. Your chest finally expands and breathes. However, even upon reaching this plane of mental clarity and emotional abundance, there is a final step. The labyrinth of the mind still holds one last threshold that we all need to cross to seal this definitive transformation and ensure that the ghosts of the past never again take control of our destiny. This final threshold that we all need to cross is not a magical place where pain disappears forever, or where fear ceases to exist. The great illusion of spiritual healing is believing that, at the end of the journey, you will become untouchable, floating above human wounds. True magic, the ultimate alchemy that Carl Jung revealed to us, is radically different. Healing is not about eliminating the darkness from your life. Healing is about developing the monumental capacity to sustain your own pain without trying to escape. It is about looking directly into the eyes of your greatest fear and deciding, with unwavering firmness, that you will stand by your own side no matter what happens. The daily practice of this conscious love doesn't happen in grand rituals or dramatic displays. It happens in the ordinary, invisible silence of your days. It happens in the exact way you talk to yourself when you make a mistake, or when you feel terribly insecure. It happens on those cold nights when you choose to listen to your own cries, instead of numbing your mind with shallow distractions, or the company of those who don't value your presence. The practical path to keeping this new frequency alive is simple, but it demands immense courage. You must become the silent and affectionate observer of yourself. Every time your body reacts with that old desperation, begging you to plead for attention or accept crumbs of affection, take a deep breath. Stop for a single second. Feel your feet firmly touch the ground and remind your own flesh that the past is over. Tell your frightened inner child that you are now the adult responsible for this story, and that it is finally safe with you. Every time you set a boundary with love, every time you choose your peace instead of the chaos that used to excite you, you are breaking an ancestral chain of abandonment. You are healing not only your heart, but rewriting the spiritual legacy of all those who came before you and who suffered from the same absence of love. In a world that violently pushes us towards superficiality and constant distraction, the simple fact that you have remained here, listening to the call of your own soul until this very moment, is a silent and incredibly powerful revolution. You chose the truth, even if it hurts at first. You chose to stop running away, and I want you to know, with all the certainty in your heart, that you are not walking alone in this desert. We are a legion of souls awakening at the same time, learning to love without masks, and building a new world from our own ruins. If this profound knowledge touched your essence and brought clarity to your journey, I ask that you leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. This is our way of keeping this fire burning and ensuring that this message reaches other people who are lost in the darkness, just as we once were. I invite you to scroll down to the comments and share your story. Tell us about the destructive pattern you finally recognized, or the pain you are healing today. You can write completely anonymously if you prefer, but don't forget to record your voice. Your authentic and vulnerable account may be exactly the luminous mirror that another person needs to find today, to not give up on their own life. We are building a safe haven here, and your presence is fundamental to us. Today, you definitively close the long chapter in which love was a desperate and exhausting chase. Remember this truth every day of your life. You don't need to be perfect, enlightened, or completely free of flaws to be deeply loved. You just need to be real. Take care of yourself with the reverence and devotion that your sacred soul deserves, and never, ever again abandon yourself.